A socialite invites 20 wealthy women for her son, but he surprises everyone by choosing the Clea. The party buzzed with an energy that felt almost suffocating. Laughter mingled with the clinking of crystal glasses, a symphony of entitlement and ambition. Evelyn Harrington orchestrated every detail with the precision of a conductor, her smile radiant as she welcomed the 20 elite women into their high-rise Manhattan haven. For them, tonight was a runway of social maneuvers, all competing for the affections of her only son, Alex. But an uninvited tension pulsed behind the opulence. As they veered into flirtation and philanthropy, Alex stood on the precipice of a decision that loomed like a storm cloud over his head. As he watched the women, dressed in gowns that glittered brighter than the skyline, Alex felt the constricting grip of his mother's ambitions tighten. Each delicate laugh seemed to mock his quietude, each manufactured tale of their charitable hearts deepening the despair that dulled his spirit. He was a historical scholar. His heart belonged to dusty tomes and the narratives of lost worlds. Yet here he was, a prized centerpiece to a room buzzing with social strategy, feeling as invisible as the candle wax pooling beneath their shimmering lights. The first moral dilemma arose when Evelyn, with her perfected parlor manners, began unveiling his accomplishments, spinning webs of expectation with every word. My son, the brilliant historian, a worthy legacy. Those words echoed in his mind, each syllable a burrowing reminder that he was meant to be a perfect heir in the lineage of Harringtons. But buried beneath the glimmering surface, he yearned for authenticity, desiring a connection that acknowledged his true self. A connection with Clea, the artist who had grown alongside him amidst the grit and resilience of the Bronx. Suddenly the room shifted. Clea entered, her vibrant aura instantly captivating the crowd, yet igniting a chill in the atmosphere. The luxury-laden women, used to their polished lives, whispered, "Too raw," one noted with a dismissive flick of her wrist. Alex's heart clenched as he watched, torn between defending Clea and succumbing to his family's ideals. The stark contrast between Clea's spirited independence and their stifling expectations only amplified his turmoil. Could he genuinely pursue love born of authenticity when suffocated by the demands of social status? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tension crystallized in an electric moment as Clea's laughter intertwined with the cacophony of judgmental whispers. Eyes drifted toward him, stares searching for a hint of his loyalty, his decision. With every flick of his gaze, he felt the weight of his mother's dreams press heavier on his chest. Alex wrestled with an aching persistence. How long could he stand on this precipice before he either plunged into isolation or shattered the chains binding him to a life unlived? A pause enveloped the room. Conversations withered as reality crashed in, leaving a profound silence that pulsed with possibility. Alex stood tense, heart racing, considering the magnitude of love measured against loyalty, societal expectations against his haunting yearnings. His choice lingered, a loaded question punctuating the air, leaving the crowd dangling between eagerness and deepening uncertainty. Would he choose a manufactured courtship gilded in wealth, or would he dare to reach for Clea, risking it all? The night morphed into a tableau of moral reckoning, and Alex felt himself teetering, his true self hovering between the demands of lineage and the depths of human connection. The world around Alex faded into a blur as he battled the internal struggle intensifying within him. He had spent his life in the shadow of his mother's aspirations, a pawn in her strategic games of social hierarchy. Every expectation was a brick in the wall closing around him, each laughter and toast reinforcing the edifice of his confinement. He felt a fury rising against the sobering truth that each of these women, with their finely polished personas, represented a future he abhorred. Clea's presence flickered like a beacon through the fog of his discontent. In her eyes he saw not judgment or ambition, but an understanding that transcended the superficial. She was a genuine artist, her soul laid bare on canvases that spoke of struggle, passion, and truth, everything he longed to embrace. Yet the fear of societal reprisal for even considering a bid for sincerity plagued him. Would he risk not only his comfort, but also that of Clea, dragging her into a world that would never fully accept her? He caught Clea's eye, her gaze penetrating and unwavering, filled with a challenge that stirred something long dormant within him. It was an invitation to rebellion, a call to authenticity that was both exhilarating and terrifying. As whispers began again, dissecting and criticizing her every move, Alex felt a swell of determination surge through him. He could not allow her to be a victim of his indecision and the pressure of a life driven by others' desires. Taking a quiet but resolute step forward, he broke free from the thrumming crowd. Each movement felt charged with a purpose he hadn't realized he possessed. As he approached Clea, he caught the sharp eyes of his mother slicing through him like daggers, her silent plea for compliance far from lost on him. But tonight, in this moment of reckoning, he was done playing the role that was forced upon him. "Clea," he said, his voice steady despite the cacophony of thoughts racing through his mind. "I want to leave." The simplicity of his words was underscored by an urgency he hadn't planned. Confusion flitted across her face before blossoming into understanding, a flicker of hope ignited by his declaration. She stepped toward him, her presence strong and grounding, a solid anchor amidst the swirling storm of their contrasting worlds. "Are you serious?" Clea asked, her voice barely above a whisper but brimming with surprise and excitement. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," he replied, and the weight of that statement struck him with startling clarity. The decision to pursue authenticity was an act of defiance, and it was liberating. In that instant, Alex realized he was no longer just the reluctant pawn. He possessed more than academic credentials. He had the power to choose the very direction of his life. Watching Clea's expression shift from disbelief to joy, he felt a rush of ambition swell inside him, a desire not just for a relationship but for life lived vividly and boldly. As they moved toward the exit, the atmosphere thickened with tension. Evelyn's outraged look drilled into his back, voices rose in anger, and the glittering facade of high society cracked under the pressure of his actions. Alex had never felt more alive, liberated from a role written by others. Together, he and Clea stepped into the unknown, an unfurling path of possibility ahead, defined by courage rather than conformity. But lurking in the shadows of his newfound freedom was the reality of consequences, both internal and external. He would have to confront not only his mother's fury, but also the doubts cast by the very world he was attempting to escape. The thrill of defiance propelled them forward, but deep within an unsettling question lingered. Would their love thrive, or unravel under the weight of scrutiny and consequence? As they left the venue, heartbeats racing in synchrony, a moment of clarity struck Alex. This was not just an escape, but the beginning of a profound journey toward self-discovery. The question of whether he and Clea could withstand the forces of societal expectation loomed large, preparing him for the next step into his uncertain yet hopeful future. As the night snuffed the last optimistic glimmer of the party behind them, Alex felt a tightening resolve. One way or another, he would have to face the consequences of his choice head-on. What awaited him on this path of truth would redefine everything he thought he knew about love, legacy, and identity. The chill of the evening air wrapped around Alex and Clea as they stepped away from the clusters of glittering socialites, now ghosts in the distant background. Yet what lay ahead felt even more daunting than the crowd they had just escaped. The freedom he craved came with no roadmap, only the weight of uncertainty, a concept he had previously avoided at all costs. His heart pounded an unfamiliar rhythm within him, thrumming with a mix of excitement and fear. They walked through the quiet streets, the shadows of buildings towering over them somehow echoing the looming consequences of his decision. To others, leaving that world behind might seem reckless, but Alex felt a strange clarity. The sounds of elegant laughter and idle chatter faded, replaced by a powerful quiet that almost invited introspection. "Where to now?" Clea asked, her voice soft and tinged with hopeful curiosity. She looked up at him, her expression a mixture of apprehension and excitement, as if she was about to leap into the unknown alongside him. "I don't know," he admitted. but anywhere feels better than where I was. This vulnerability anchored their connection. Clea's presence brought a sense of stability, yet the reality of their choices lay heavily upon him. They shared a moment of silence, yet within it, uncharted possibilities thrived. As they strolled, Alex faced the truth. Detachment from his previous life would not be instantaneous. Every interaction he had ever known, every relationship had been tainted by expectation, and cleansing that taint required more than mere physical distance from his past. It demanded introspection and, inevitably, confrontation. "What about your mother?" Clea's question pierced through his silent contemplation, and he felt his gut twist. "What about her?" He replied defensively, yet deep down he knew her mention was unavoidable. Clea turned to face him, her eyes holding a steady gaze that dared him to confront his truth. "She won't just let this go, you know that. I've spent my life living as her puppet. I can't go back. I can't let her dictate who I am any longer." The resolve in his voice surprised even him. The emotions swirling inside him had turned into something resembling hope, pushing him toward an identity he had yet to fully discover. "But what does that mean? For us?" Clea pressed gently, her voice threaded with concern. "It can't simply be about running away from her. You need to know what you're running towards." As Alex wrestled with her question, something profound bubbled to the surface. He realized he had spent so long evading the truth that he had never truly articulated what he yearned for. What empty dream had he been chasing all this time? This moment shrouded him in awareness. The challenge wouldn't solely be confronting his mother, but also facing the aspirational void left in her absence. The thought of a blank canvas before him felt exhilarating and terrifying. What if he could paint it however he wished? Suddenly, he longed to examine the depths of his own interests, the art he had always admired but never pursued, the world of creativity that his mother had disdained. With every heartbeat, the prospect of artistry and passion pulled him further from his past. "I need to find out who I am without my mother's expectations," he finally declared. "Not just for me, but for us." Clea nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "That's a start. Let's explore this world together." As they rounded a corner, a worn art gallery caught Alex's eye, its light still glimmering in the evening shade. He felt an irresistible draw toward it, an echo of his identity beckoning him from within. "I want to see what's inside." Hand in hand, they stepped into the gallery, and as they absorbed the art radiating raw honesty, Alex felt a burgeoning sense of purpose igniting within him. Perhaps this would be the beginning of his transformation, a potent reclamation of self that had long been suppressed. But amidst the exhilaration, a visceral awareness flickered just below the surface. His mother would stop at nothing to regain control. As they stood together, surrounded by unrestrained creativity, the silhouette of the woman he feared loomed over him, and the question crystallized in his mind. Was he ready to battle the very foundation of his upbringing to embrace a new identity? The realization pierced his anticipation, casting a fleeting doubt that begged more exploration. Was he prepared for the inevitable confrontation that awaited? The gallery's atmosphere enveloped Alex and Clea, a sanctuary vibrantly alive, yet starkly different from the stifling opulence they had just escaped. The walls whispered the stories of artists willing to lay bare their souls, and with every brushstroke, he felt fragments of his own identity emerging from the shadows. "Look at this piece," Clea said, pointing to a large canvas that pulsated with chaotic colors. "It's like it screams for attention, yet there's such vulnerability in that chaos." "Like us," Alex mumbled, staring intently at the artwork, drawn to the turmoil it expressed. He instinctively felt a connection, both lovely and menacing. Should we explore further? Clea's excitement ignited something stubborn within him. She had dared to step into the unknown beside him, and that buoyed him with a fresh sense of determination. A wave of emotion surged through him. Each piece in the gallery caught his eye like a magnet, drawing him closer to realizations that had been buried. Peering into the depths of that chaotic canvas, he began to unravel his fears about venturing into the world, stripped of his mother's influence. "What if I collapse in the face of my own choices?" he whispered, not entirely ready for Clea to hear. Or what if you soar? Clea replied, her voice steadying the tremor of anxiety that had tried to snatch him away. Alex allowed her words to settle within him, urging him to confront the crushing expectations that had so often defined him. His mother's shadow felt more distant in this sanctuary of self-expression. Yet the prospect of artistic pursuit also meant diving into the depths of his vulnerabilities, a journey riddled with insecurities and unanswered questions. Do you think I have what it takes to create something meaningful? He finally turned to Clea, his voice laced with disbelief. You won't know unless you try, she encouraged. The beauty of art is in the exploration and the process, not just the final product. With a new sense of clarity, Alex felt truth wash over him like an invigorating tide. The image of his mother's disapproving gaze flickered in his mind, attempting to suffocate his burgeoning motivation, but he pushed it away. In his heart, he clutched tightly to the thought that he could carve out his identity, unshackled from archaic expectations. He needed to act, to channel this fire and pain into creation. The very idea thrilled him and suffocated him at once. Meanwhile, uncertainty loomed large over the periphery. How would he practically do this? How to translate these emotions into tangible art? The pressure of doing it right nudged restlessly at the edges of his confidence. Let's start small, he announced, his resolve solidifying. Maybe I can take a class, learn about the techniques I've always wanted to explore. He smiled tentatively, weighing those uncertain possibilities. Now you're talking, Clea beamed. Can you imagine what you'll create? As they navigated through the gallery, their path illuminated by vivid artistry, Alex felt simultaneous determination and trepidation flood in waves. The sanctuary of creativity beckoned him, yet the stakes of his personal journey heightened. His mother's looming presence still hovered at the edge of his consciousness, warning him that art wouldn't just be about canvas and paints, but about standing against her impositions. This step not only marked a personal turning point, but signaled a noticeable shift in the power dynamics of their relationship. Clea, he paused amidst the glow of the gallery lights. What if I challenge my mother directly? What if I show her who I really am through my art? She regarded him solemnly, the intensity of their shared moment hanging like fragile glass between them. You would have to be ready to face her judgment. The weight of her words settled heavily, spiraling uncertainty into every corner of his psyche. Was he truly ready for such confrontation? With determination sparking within, Alex nodded slowly, commitment coalescing with fear. He needed to ignite the slow burn of reconciliation between his aspirations and the weighty specter of his past. The time had indeed come for him to assert all that he had yet to embrace. Yet as he looked deeper into the pieces around him, the fiery resolve shuddered. Was he truly capable of translating these feelings and doubts into art? Would it actually serve as a bridge between him and his mother? As they exited the gallery, Clea squeezed his hand, grounding him even when questions threatened to spiral out of control. Whatever happens, you won't have to face it alone. In that moment, determination mingled with anxiety, intertwining so densely that it was hard to see through the haze. With a new fire igniting, Alex walked down the street, igniting yet another question within. What would this creative journey demand of him? And how much of himself was he willing to sacrifice for it? The journey home felt surreal as Alex and Clea walked side by side, the vibrancy of the gallery still coursing through his veins. Every step ignited his imagination, yet the voice of doubt lurked ominously in the background. The prospect of taking a class, a tangible first step into the artistic world, danced between exhilaration and sheer terror. What's on your mind? Clea's inquiry broke through his swirling thoughts. Just thinking about what I want to create. What can I possibly express that hasn't already been done? His words hung in the air, heavy with insecurity. Who says it has to be something completely new? Your perspective is unique. You bring your own experiences, fears, and hopes to the table. Clea offered him a reassuring smile, one that advanced the ember of determination flickering within him. Yeah, but can I codify all of that into something coherent? If my art doesn't resonate, then what? Images of his mother's critical gaze infiltrated his mind, weighing heavily, filling him with uncertainty. Clea stopped and faced him directly. Art is not a test, Alex. It's a reflection. Your reflection. Stop thinking of it as a performance. She knew him well, aware of his propensity to overanalyze. He took a deep, steadied breath as the literal weight of her words sank in. A subtle revolution was stirring inside him, and he realized for the first time that the power of creation resided not just in the outcome, but in the authenticity of the emotion behind it. As they turned onto a quieter street, the world around him felt momentarily paused, a blank canvas awaiting color. Okay, let's say I can express something true to me. How do I even begin? Find a class that resonates with you and dive in. The more you explore and experiment, the clearer your voice will become. Her enthusiasm was infectious, motivating him to think beyond the constraints of his upbringing. What if he would stop standing on the sidelines? The thought blossomed within, feeding the flame of ambition. He realized that this was not merely about confronting his mother. It extended to a more profound questioning of who he wanted to become. Right. Once I get started, I can build something genuine. Empowered by this realization, he pulled out his phone, scrolling through options for local art classes. As names and images popped up on the screen, an exhilarating prospect unfolded before him. What's the first one that catches your eye? Clea nudged him gently. There's a beginner's painting course starting next week. His voice trembled with both excitement and trepidation. But what if I fail? Then you learn and adapt, just like any artist before you. Remember, the greatest works often come from failure. So go ahead. What's stopping you? He paused, grappling with the possibilities. The fear of rejection was undeniable, but so was the call for personal growth. Even on this precipice, he sensed a change within. The fear was less about what others would think, and more about discovering what he could truly do. So what do I need? He chuckled nervously, already picturing himself standing stiffly in front of a class. Just focus on what you want to express. The rest will come with practice. Trust your instincts. Clea's voice shone with conviction. His heart raced as he considered the transformative potential before him. Taking a class wasn't merely about learning techniques. It was about redefining all that he had shied away from. He needed to embrace the risk that came with expressing raw emotion. As they turned a corner, the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow across the skyline. Inspiration sparked. Vivid ideas collided with self-doubt. Did he dare to imagine unleashing the tumult within? Could he capture the struggle between expectation and desire onto a canvas? With newfound resolve, Alex committed to approaching the instructor for the class before the week ended, determined to chase his artistic ambitions without yielding to fear. But what would happen when he finally encountered the high expectations of his mother, magnified by his own burgeoning self-awareness? The looming possibility clawed at him, revealing that the real confrontation wasn't just with her, but with the insecurities that threatened to derail him at every turn. This journey is bound to lead somewhere intense, he mused, noting the convergence of anticipation and dread within him. For Alex, the moment of enlightenment teetered precariously on the edge of a new choice, with the shadows of judgment threatening to crush his aspirations. As he approached the edge of this artistic undertaking, a haunting question emerged. Could he find his true voice before being silenced again? The week began, and deadlines loomed. Each day felt like an eternity, as anticipation for the painting class grew. Alex's routine shifted in surprising ways. He meticulously arranged his evenings to include dedicated time for sketching. It was an exercise in self-discovery, but more importantly, it became a refuge. He would sit at his small kitchen table, surrounded by watercolor sets and stacks of paper, exploring shapes and colors. The physical act of creation transformed the voice of doubt into a whisper, giving way to a growing dialogue of possibility. Yet, after each brushstroke, feelings of inadequacy resurfaced. Could he truly capture authenticity? Could his palette communicate the rush of emotions that swelled inside? Each evening, mirrors of imagined setbacks lurked in the corner of his mind, reminding him of expectations both external and internal. Are you ready for this? Clea's question came after a particularly zealous session, where Alex had wrestled with a canvas that irritatingly refused to yield to his vision. I think so, he replied, though his voice trembled slightly. But what if everyone else has something brilliant to offer? What if mine pales in comparison? Clea crossed her arms and offered a challenging gaze, her determination palpable. Why do you care about comparing yourself? You're not here to compete. This is about you expressing yourself. Your story. You have to own that. Her conviction struck a chord, but the melody of self-doubt loomed larger. Each private victory felt overshadowed by a looming dread of judgment, primarily from his mother's anticipated scorn. Would acceptance be wrapped in the layers of his work, or would he create something so deeply personal that the fear of exposure held him back? The day of the first class arrived. As he stood outside the studio, the facade of the building felt imposing, seemingly taunting his fears. He inhaled deeply, the scent of turpentine in the air, awakening memories of ambition, but also fears of inadequacy. A significant part of him wanted to flee. Doubt seeped through his composure, convincing him that stepping inside would be a sign of exposure rather than bravery. Just as he turned to leave, Clea's voice rose from the periphery. You got this, Alex. Just remember, creation is a process. Don't overthink it. Emboldened by her consuming faith, he stepped inside. The studio was vibrant, alive with splashes of color and the buzz of excited voices. Other students milled around, some absorbed in conversation while others hastily flipped through sketchbooks filled with their creations. A wave of insecurity crashed over him. Yet, amid the chaos, he spotted a quiet corner, a blank canvas waiting for the first stroke. Alex maneuvered through the crowd, determined to embrace the uncomfortable energy pooling within him. Dark thoughts danced in his mind, but he clenched his fists and transformed that nervous energy into fascination. Moments later, he sat before a large white canvas, instructor's instructions merging with the clamor of the room. Supplies arranged meticulously nearby, he dipped his brush into paint, allowing the vibrant colors to bleed across the surface. He found himself exploring shades and patterns reflecting his internal struggle, his fears, his aspirations, his unrecognized potential. Each brushstroke unveiled layers he'd kept hidden, breathing life into what he thought could never be articulated. But beneath the surface of focus, a constant echo reverberated. What if this wasn't good enough? As if sensing that turmoil, Clea approached, observing his evolving work. See how immersed you are? Just breathe, Alex, because maybe this is your moment to truly confront everything that haunts you. The instructor walked past, nodding in approval at the emerging visuals, urging Alex to press on. Another wave of exhilaration washed over him. Perhaps this was more than just an attempt at capturing emotions. Perhaps it was a redefinition of his boundaries. Yet, doubts crackled in the background, filled with fear and expectation. As he glanced at the colors before him, the chaotic fusion of fears manifesting on canvas, he felt the pressure of impending judgments, not just from his mother, but also from within. Today, we confront the canvas and our own limitations, the instructor clarified in a sweeping motion, cutting through the tension in the room. Alex's heart raced as clarity broke through the fog of his mind, revealing a question so powerful that it shook him to the core. Was he ready to unveil his truth and risk rejection from both his peers and his past? With that thought anchored in his mind, he pushed the brush across the canvas with newfound confidence. But as he swirled vivid colors into more complex forms, he confronted the undeniable truth. A reckoning with his mother's expectations loomed over him, threatening to reshape everything he represented. There it was, a moment to embrace or a precipice to fall from. And in that realization, a deeper, haunting question emerged. Would he allow past judgments to define him, or dare to reveal his authentic self? The studio buzzed with creative energy, an electric current that wrapped around Alex like a cocoon. The air thickened with the scent of oils and brushstrokes as he began layering colors, the chaos within him erupting into vibrant waves across the canvas. With every stroke, frustration metamorphosed into a curious exploration of his emotions. He navigated shades of blue, yellow, and crimson, allowing the paint to narrate his personal saga, a narrative long shackled by silence. Despite this dynamic release, internal turmoil simmered beneath the surface. Each color choice summoned the specter of his mother's voice, a haunting echo pressing against his core. Does this reflect the path I've paved for you? The question lingered like a looming shadow, a constant reminder that he was not just creating art, he was engaging in a dialogue with his past. Alex faltered, his brush hovering over the canvas as the weight of expectation squeezed his heart. He glanced toward the other students, each engrossed in their work, seemingly free of the burdens he carried. They have genuine stories to tell, he thought enviously. As if on cue, the instructor's voice cut through his reverie. Your art is not meant to be understood by others first. It has to resonate with you. Emboldened, he resumed painting, pushing through that choked breath of self-doubt. He began channeling the very emotions that terrified him, the anxiety of not fitting into a mold, the desire to break free from his past, and a yearning for acceptance not just from others but from himself. The canvas began to transform, becoming a map of his heart, reflecting the inconsistencies and contradictions he'd long ignored. Yet, as he added chaotic swirls of color, an insidious whisper barely registered in his mind. What if it disappoints her? With each passing moment, the prospect of his mother seeing this piece felt like a ticking clock, each beat resonating with unresolved tension. How could he reconcile the joy of creation with the need for approval from the very person who built the foundation of his fears? The instructor walked by again, her eyes widening in unexpected appreciation. You are courageous, Alex. This is more than just paint. It's an invitation for others to see your soul. You've tapped into something profound. The compliment was a lifeline, igniting a flicker of hope that began to bridge the chasm between self-doubt and self-belief. But that flicker quickly waned as he returned to what lay before him. True acceptance felt elusive, a sliver of light buried beneath layers of expectations, fears, and the looming specter of his past. Would his mother ever truly understand? The fear gnawed at him, threatening to extinguish the illumination sparked by the instructor's praise. An unexpected sound drew his attention. Lena, one of his peers, realized she had made an error with her composition, her breath hitching as frustration morphed into tears. Alex felt an inexplicable urge to connect. He approached her, hesitance swirling within, grappling with his own insecurities even as he extended a hand. It's okay. We all struggle. It's part of the process, he murmured, wrapping empathy around them both. In that moment of vulnerability, he realized something crucial. Art was not merely about individual merit. It was also about community, shared experiences, vulnerabilities, and the acknowledgement of struggles. He felt the framework of his own fears beginning to shift slightly, as if he could redefine them through understanding and connection. Returning to his canvas, he infused it with bolder strokes, more daring than before. The artwork began to resonate with more authenticity, layers upon layers reflecting who he was becoming as opposed to who he thought he should be. Finally, he submerged in the act of creation, becoming both artist and art, a singular expression of raw humanity brimming with complexity. Yet the prophecy of confrontation still loomed. Despite the small triumph he felt within, a larger, more formidable reckoning was on the horizon. The reality of revealing his work to his peers, and then possibly his mother, still haunted him like a specter thickening in the shadows. Now armed with a new sense of clarity, Alex faced his fears head-on, but knew within that another battle waited, one defined not just by the echoes of his past, but by the courage to confront it. The moment for self-defining choice was closer than ever. Would he rise to challenge the expectations laid before him, or retreat into the silence of doubt once more? He pressed the brush into the canvas harder, heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. Soon, the time would come to unveil his truth. How could he harness the resurgence of his creative self when the very act of sharing felt like standing naked in a storm? The answer awaited just beyond the edge of his brush, and he sensed that the next step would be a leap into the unknown, both thrilling and terrifying. The studio felt smaller now, the walls closing in as Alex wrestled with his fear of exposure. With each stroke, a part of him peeled away, revealing color patterns that danced in a chaotic symphony but still held back that final release. He painted furiously, driven by an urgent need to blend his artistic expression with the clarity of purpose he had recently discovered. But the underlying tension nagged at him still. The thought of his mother examining the piece loomed like an uncomfortable guest at a dinner party. The anticipation of judgment sat heavy in his chest. What if she sees only flaws? What if she finds no merit in my emotions? The questions twisted in his mind like static. He pulled back momentarily, aware that he was teetering on the brink of creativity and self-doubt. A subtle shift in the room caught his attention. The instructor had gathered the students for a critique session. As they arranged around her, a wave of apprehension gripped Alex. Would he be expected to share his internal struggles along with the artwork? Would vulnerability be welcomed or ridiculed? He clutched his palate, a mixture of anxiety and defiance swelling within him. When his turn came, he faced the gathering crowd, his heart pounding like a drum. Stepping forward, he held his breath, drawing strength from the vibrant colors that had become extensions of his inner self. The familiar specter of his mother's voice flared up again, echoing the conversation they had always avoided, but was now a whisper lost among the lively discussions erupting around him. "Let's see your work, Alex," the instructor encouraged, her tone lively yet gentle. He revealed his canvas, the once hidden depths of his feelings laid bare for all to scrutinize. For a heartbeat, silence fell upon the students. Alex felt naked, exposed under the weight of their gaze. Self-consciousness bubbled up, threatening to drown out the silent testament of his journey. Then, one by one, comments began to flow. The words filled the space, lively and invigorating, morphing trepidation into exhilaration. "Your use of colors is striking. There's a real sense of emotion here." Each positive remark felt like a warm embrace, solidifying the belief that maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to connect with something deeper than himself. But one voice, harsh and critical, broke through the supportive murmuring. "It looks disorganized, like a child's painting. Is this really art?" Alex's heart dropped. An icy wave of doubt washed over him, flooding the confidence he had just begun to build. Did he truly have the right to call himself an artist? Instead of retreating into silence, something shifted within him. The colors on his canvas transcended their pigment. They were his chaos, his growth, and evidence of a battle fought, and not one lost. Drawing a deep breath, he replied, "It reflects where I am in my journey. It's about embracing the imperfections I've fought against." The response startled even himself. It was a moment of revelation, an acknowledgement that he was not just painting, he was participating in life, every imperfection necessitating acceptance. The harsh critic's gaze softened slightly, and even some murmuring began again, this time with respect for the courage it took to voice what many feared. As he stood there, he discovered a profound truth within himself. Art wasn't about confirmation. It was about embracing his own story. The urge to shrink back had been replaced with an invigorating desire to delve deeper into understanding both his work and himself. Yet the battle was not over. As the session concluded, his instructor approached him. "You have a unique voice, Alex. Don't allow anyone to dilute that. Your next step is crucial. Think about your next piece and how you want it to speak for you." A jolt of anxiety coursed through him at that thought. How would he channel this newly found voice into something tangible yet again? Now staring at a blank canvas, he realized that the freedom he sought wasn't merely a backdrop. It was something actively created. The next painting had to resonate with his evolving identity, and the pressure to clarify his perspective felt overwhelming. As he stood before the empty canvas, he considered the duality of his existence. The fear of judgment loomed, yet another part of him craved boldness, intimacy, and connection. He envisioned his next work, not merely a continuation, but a confrontation with everything that restrained him. Every choice he made moving forward could mold not just the art, but his very essence. He was on the cusp of unveiling something transformative. The time was ripe to embrace risk. With brush in hand, Alex felt a whisper of possibility. He wasn't merely an artist, but a vessel of truth, ready to translate turmoil into beauty. And as he dipped the brush into paint, a surge of resolve filled him. He knew that this journey was far from over. Perhaps the question now continued to echo within him. How could he best represent his truth moving forward? The answer remained elusive, but tantalizingly within reach, just beyond the delicate stroke of his brush. In the silence of the studio, Alex felt the weight of expectation settle around him like a thick fog. The blank canvas stared back, a challenge, a promise, and an invitation, all at once. He took a step back, allowing his pulse to synchronize with the rhythm of his thoughts. The tools of his trade lay before him, brushes, palettes, and an array of colors that mirrored the spectrum of emotions swirling within him. Yet, the fear of inadequacy loomed large. The instructor's words echoed in his mind. Think about your next piece and how you want it to speak for you. What did that even mean? Questions ricocheted through his brain. Should he draw from personal experiences or delve into social commentaries that might feel safer? Clenching the brush tighter, he grappled with the impulsive urge to paint something grand, something profound. The industry's demands, and what conventional art suggested, crept into his consciousness, casting shadows on his vision. But he realized he had done enough of that. His last critique had unlocked something deeper within, an acceptance of his unapologetic self. He had painted his emotions, embraced his imperfections, and woven his unique narrative into every hue and stroke. Why should this next canvas be any different? Alex blinked, breathing in the scent of paint and turpentine, a visceral reminder of his obsession. The world outside the studio felt distant, fading alongside his inhibitions. His thoughts veered towards the question he had suppressed. What did he really want to express? The thought of exposing his vulnerability terrified him, yet the idea of shying away from it was even more daunting. It was time to confront not just his art, but the truths nestled at the core of his existence. Driven by a newfound intention, Alex grabbed a palette and swiftly mixed colors with frenetic energy. He let instinct guide his hand, allowing memories of laughter and loneliness to flow onto the canvas. Each brushstroke felt like a revelation. Layers of bright colors clashed with dark, moody undertones, depicting the dance between joy and despair. His technique, once hesitant, began to evolve. He dipped into the paint, layering his emotions thickly, unevenly, a true representation of life's chaos. The more he painted, the more he uncovered aspects of himself he had long buried. The softness of golden yellows warmed the corners, even as tumultuous reds and blues wreaked havoc across the center. What had started as fear transformed into fierce determination. Every brushstroke felt converging, culminating in a vivid exploration of identity. As time slipped away, he became acutely aware of the growing crowd of students milling about the studio, their murmurs forming an ambient background. This time, he wasn't just creating for them. He was sculpting an understanding of himself, reflecting an inner journey through external expression. No longer was he merely seeking validation. He was delving into the essence of who he was and why he needed to create. Yet, as the final strokes seemed to settle into a newfound familiarity, an uninvited anxiety clawed at the edges of his resolve. With his brush hovering above the canvas, a dark thought intruded. What if he was still not enough? What if others couldn't see the depth that lay beneath the surface? The room felt heavier now, a lingering intensity enveloping him from all sides. Alex took a deep, shaky breath, his heart racing at the thought of inadequacy. This was more than a painting. It was the rawness of himself laid bare, a true confrontation with every fear he'd ever harbored. Could he risk the potential rejection from peers he had initially sought acceptance from? Suddenly aware of the clear line drawn between his desire for affirmation and the fear of discovery, he lowered the brush, caught in that moment of indecision. Just then, one of his classmates stepped closer, a curious look in her eyes, and said, "What's the story behind your piece?" And as Alex found himself grappling with his words, a realization emerged. This wasn't merely about painting. It presented an opportunity to articulate his existence, to express how far he had come. For the first time, he saw how deeply interconnected his art was with his journey. The moment of truth had arrived, and how he navigated this question would determine not only his artistic path, but his personal evolution. How could he best articulate the narrative behind his colors? The answer felt tantalizingly close, yet just out of reach as he struggled to embrace them fully. The studio sat vibrantly alight, yet Alex felt as though a storm surged within him. His canvas held a kaleidoscope of colors, a vivid representation of the tumultuous emotions drawn from his journey of self-discovery. But standing before it, he faced a crossroads, confronting not only the anxieties that accompanied vulnerability, but the awe-inspiring potential of revealing his truth. The question from his classmate hung heavily in the air. "What's the story behind your piece?" It was a simple inquiry, yet it nudged his deepest fears awake. What could he say? Could he articulate the depths of what lay cracked open on canvas, his fears of inadequacy, the longing for acceptance, the push and pull between his mother's expectations and his quest for authenticity? Taking a steadying breath, Alex decided to lean into the vulnerability he had cultivated across the weeks. "This piece," he began, voice steadying, "represents my struggle between who I am and who I thought I had to be." A moment of silence enveloped him, as he gauged his peers' reactions, curiosity mixed with an empathetic understanding. Deciding to embrace the instinctual pull towards honesty, he continued. "The colors reflect the chaos within. Bright tones fight against darker shades, just like the different sides of my identity battle for control. This is about my fight for authenticity, against the backdrop of expectations." A murmur of appreciation swept through the room, and Alex felt a warmth deepen within him. Here, laid bare, were his aspirations and vulnerabilities coalescing into a unified narrative, intertwining art with identity. He had come to realize that his journey wasn't just an individual exploration. It was a symphony composed of shared struggles and connections with others who sought acceptance. "I think it's beautiful," his classmate replied. "It's raw and honest. You're not just creating art, you're telling your story, and that's always necessary." Her words ignited something profound within him. Each brushstroke had not only been a reflection of his own tumultuous internal landscape, but had also become a dialogue with those around him. The artistry blossomed from beneath the layers of fear he had carried for so long. Despite a lingering dread surrounding the eventual confrontation with his mother, this moment felt pivotal and transformative. He momentarily pictured sharing this piece with her, bracing for the criticism that may come from her relentless expectations. And yet, encapsulated in this very act of creation, he recognized his resilience. This wasn't just an expression of fear, but also of determination. As the instructor moved among the students, nodding in approval at the discussions ignited by Alex's work, he felt a stir of gratitude for the unexpected support of the community forming around him. Each person surrounding him was engaged in their struggles, pursuing their own journeys, and yet they connected over the universal pursuit of hope through art. A warmth enveloped him, a realization that although individual journeys remained unique, the shared experiences throbbed with a heartbeat of solidarity. Cultivating vulnerability was perhaps his truest strength, and so he embraced his emerging role within this tapestry, bolstered by a deep newfound confidence. As class wrapped up, Alex stood beside his canvas, awash in a sense of achievement. He wasn't merely an artist anymore. He was an architect of his identity, wholly learned to embrace his narrative. A solid foundation of confidence had been built through endurance, and he felt a newfound clarity about the complexities of his existence. Before he exited the studio, Alex turned back to face the canvas, taking in every swirl of paint as if it were an extension of himself, vibrant and alive. He understood now that the courageous choice to pursue authenticity underscored everything he sought, both as an artist and as a person. Exiting the studio, the warmth of the fading daylight greeted him, symbolizing the liberating journey ahead. Clea was waiting nearby, her smile radiating proud support. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice laced with palpable anticipation. "It felt incredible," he replied, buoyed by exhilaration and the liberation of sharing himself wholly. "I believe I'm finally stepping into the person I intend to be." And for the first time, Alex felt genuinely excited about the challenges ahead. This journey encompassed all facets of life, the good, the bad, and everything in between. But mostly, it symbolized the triumph of embracing his truest self, while preparing to face the consequences of living authentically. No longer a pawn to anyone's ambitions. As they walked down the street, A sense of promise tinged the air. Alex knew that his artistic endeavors were only the beginning. He was ready to challenge not just his mother but also, and perhaps most importantly, the intensity of his inner fears. The journey toward conceptualizing his identity would continue, yet with each courageous step, it became clearer. He had conquered more than just paint. He had conquered himself, and in doing so, would pave the way for an existence richer than he had ever imagined. Now, the only question remaining was whether he had the courage to carry this momentum forward, and for the first time, he felt the thrill which came in knowing he possessed that very strength. Don't miss out on more healing and transformational stories. You need to subscribe now to the channel and be part of this journey. Leave a like now to help the story reach those who need to hear it most. Comment your thoughts and reactions. What did you think about Alex's journey? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. The moment for collective support is now.